The missing girl. I'll never forget the first time I set foot in Green Hollow. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine, and a thick fog clung to the trees like an unwanted secret. I'd been assigned to cover a missing persons case for my true crime blog, just another routine story, I thought. But nothing about the disappearance of Emily Dawes was routine. Emily was 16, the kind of kid who lit up a room, according to her family. Straight A student, volunteer at the local shelter, and a star on the high school swim team. She vanished 3 weeks ago after a late-night practice, leaving her car parked haphazardly near the woods and her phone buzzing unanswered on the dashboard. No signs of a struggle, no notes, no witnesses. Just a yawning silence where she used to be. Green Hollow wasn't the kind of town where people just disappeared. It was small, insular, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. But as I started interviewing locals, it became clear that beneath the surface, the town was a maze of whispers and unspoken truths. She's not the first, Mrs. Hargrove, the owner of the local diner, told me one morning over a plate of lukewarm eggs. There's a curse on this place. Been that way for decades. Emily's just the latest. A curse, right. I'd heard plenty of small-town superstitions in my line of work, and they usually led nowhere. But Mrs. Hargrove wasn't the only one to mention it. In hushed tones, people talked about the Green Hollow curse, a supposed legacy of bad luck, tragedy, and disappearances. That night, I decided to dig deeper. I camped out at the edge of the woods where Emily's car had been found. The wind howled through the trees, and every rustling leaf felt like a whisper at my back. I was alone, or at least I thought I was, until I heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound, like someone knocking on wood. The knocking grew louder as I moved deeper into the woods, flashlight trembling in my hand. I told myself it was just an animal, a bird or a deer. But the rhythm was too deliberate, too human. Then I saw it. About 50 feet ahead, a figure crouched near a large oak tree. They were tapping on the trunk with a stick, slow and methodical. My breath caught as the figure turned, revealing a face pale as bone and eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, they stood and melted into the shadows, leaving the stick wedged in the tree. My heart pounded as I approached the spot, my flashlight beam catching something carved into the bark. A name, Emily. I ran back to my car and spent the next hour uploading the footage to my laptop. But as I reviewed the video, my stomach dropped. The figure wasn't there, the knocking sound wasn't there. Only the tree, the name, and my panicked breathing remained. The next day, I visited the sheriff, a burly man named Carter with a thick southern drawl and tired eyes. When I showed him the footage, he sighed. "You should leave this alone, son. Green Hollow's got its skeletons, but dig too deep, and you'll regret it." "Skeletons like what?" I pressed. "Like Emily's uncle," he said, "and her father before him. Both of them disappeared out here in these woods, same place, same way. 3 generations, 3 disappearances." I couldn't shake the feeling that the curse wasn't just folklore. Someone or something was making people vanish. But why and how? I spent the afternoon at the library, poring over old newspapers and town records. What I found sent chills down my spine. Every 10 years, like clockwork, someone in the Dawes family had vanished near Green Hollow. The details were eerily consistent. No witnesses, no evidence, and always the woods. By the time I returned to the woods that night, I wasn't sure if I was hunting the truth or being hunted myself. I followed the trail back to the oak tree, the name Emily still etched into its bark. This time, the knocking started before I even reached the tree. I froze, scanning the darkness. The knocking came from all around me, echoing like a heartbeat. Then a voice, Emily's voice, whispered my name, "James." I spun around, and there she was, pale, hollow-eyed, and impossibly alive. "Emily," I whispered, but something was wrong. Her smile was too wide, her movements too jerky. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "He'll take you too." Behind her, the shadows seemed to ripple, forming a shape tall, angular, and inhuman. A hand reached for me, and then, nothing. I woke up on the side of the highway, my car parked neatly on the shoulder. The footage from that night was gone, along with all my notes and recordings. But the scars on my wrists, jagged, tree-like patterns remained. I never went back to Green Hollow. But sometimes, late at night, I hear knocking on my walls, slow, methodical, and I know the curse isn't finished with me yet.